AnnMaria DeMars. Hello.
Hello. Hey. So you recovered from the North Dakota Music Awards? Did you get caught up on sleep?
No. And in fact, unintentionally, people are already asking us questions, so we started planning next year's already, and it's too much. It's just too much. You were so awesome to come up here, though. We had so many good compliments about you, Dr. AnnMaria.
It was very fun, except for the Mother Nature trying to kill you part.
Yeah. She's got some PMS issues in North Dakota.
Yeah, she does. She does. Now, give people a little bit of a background on you, because speaking of the North Dakota Music Awards, everybody asked me, well, how did she get tied to the state of North Dakota? Like, how did you end up here, AnnMaria?
Well, I was graduating with my PhD from the University of California, and my oldest daughter was riding the school bus home, and somebody from a rival gang pulled up next to the busload of little kids and pulled out a gun and shot the guy in the next car in the head, dead. And so then Maria was only in, I think, the second grade, and the school calls each parent of the children who are on the bus, and they're, oh, and don't worry about this, because, you know, this sort of thing happens all the time. We have counselors on staff in the district to deal with this. I'm like, this happens all the time? And so I was graduating. I had a number of offers from different universities, and Minot State was one of them, and Minot had the lowest crime rate in the country. So that was a big plus. No, seriously. And then my late husband, when I was going to graduate school, the job market was very, very different than it is now for professors. And so we figured I could get a job anywhere. And I had it pretty good going through graduate school, and we had a full-time housekeeper. Ron had a really good job. He worked really hard. So I said, when I graduate, we'll move wherever you want to move. Not thinking he would pick the middle of North Dakota, but my husband grew up in Oregon, in outside of Myrtle Creek, Oregon, and Myrtle Creek, I think, is about, you know, population 175, and they didn't actually live in town, which I would be hard pressed to call a place with 175 people at town. So that's where he grew up, and that's what he wanted for the kids, and so I'm a woman of my word, and I took the job in Minot. And it was actually great for me, and I would really recommend it for young people, because my career has been very rewarding. And what they told us when we graduated from the University of California is that they found that people's careers were really successful in proportion to how willing they were to move. Because if you're willing to go wherever the best opportunity is, then obviously your career is going to be better. And if I had gone to, say, UCLA, there would have been 10 other people in the building more qualified than me, because I was right out of grad school. But being in North Dakota, for example, they wanted a representative from the state or on the President's Council on Mental Retardation. And I was there doing research, and there aren't a lot of people in North Dakota, so I got opportunities like that. I was director of research for the University affiliated program at Minot State. And again, if I was at a big university, that would have gone to somebody with 20 years of experience.
Right.
So, yeah, it was a great opportunity to develop my career and get a lot of experience I never would have gotten if I'd stayed in LA. But it was also very, very cold.
Yeah. And you still do a lot of like consulting work in the state too, don't you?
Oh yeah. In fact, in some ways, I never left. When I left North Dakota, I was working with Chankdeshka Chikanai Community College on the Spirit Like Nation. Back then, it was called Little Hoop, and Dr. Eric Longi was the president, and I was working for them as a professor part-time, and then also the development officer writing grants. And he said, what do? You know, you sit in an office and you analyze data and you write stuff. Do that in LA. And so I did. And I also taught the first internet course ever taught at a tribal college, because there's this new internet course thing, and that kind of segued into what we're doing now. So I still am in North Dakota, usually at least 3 or 4 weeks out of every year, often a week out of every month. It just depends on the projects we're working on.
That's insane.
Were you guys in Jamestown too?
I was a professor at Jamestown College for 4 years, and that was, so I was a professor at Minot State for 3 years, and then I moved to Jamestown College and was a professor there for 4 years.
Okay. Excellent. Well, let's back up a little bit. Now, you went to college at 16 years old, is that correct?
Yes. I really hated high school, and you would think that the typical thing someone would do if they really hated high school would be drop out. But I've never been very typical. So it's like, well, I hate high school. I think I will go to college.
So did you just take extra classes? Did you test out? How did that happen?
Well, there's a program called Early Admission, and in fact, I didn't know anything about it. About 400 and some colleges and universities around the country had it at the time. And you take your PSATs, which is the preliminary scholastic aptitude test. You do really, really well on them, and some universities will admit you. And I had no idea about any of this. I went and I took the PSATs, and I did really well, and I got these letters from universities, and part of it was there was a study going on at the time with the Ford Foundation, and you almost have to wonder if this is ethical to see if early admission to college and acceleration, has negative effects. So maybe we all would have turned out to be serial killers, but I have not so far. So
far.
Yeah, so they offered these students early admission, and then they tracked them and compared them to students who went through and graduated on the regular timeline. And I was one of the students who went in early, and what they found, because I didn't know about any of this. I mean, I got things to fill out, and occasionally I filled them out. Yeah, but the only difference, as far as I know, that they found was that the people who were admitted early were more likely to go to graduate school, which makes sense. And I did, because when you're 19 years old and you have a college degree, you may think you're smarter than God, but other people are wise enough to realize that is not the case. And they're not going to put
smarts yet. Yeah,
they're not going to put a 19-year-old in charge of much. And so I didn't have a lot of opportunities professionally, but it was easy to get into graduate school. So I went to University of Minnesota and got my MBA, swore I would never go anywhere cold again. And 11 years later, ended up taking a job in North Dakota.
So do you think it's crazy that you hated school, but now you build video games to help people
Education?
learn?
Well, I liked learning, but I hated school, and those are two different things.
Totally different things.
It's expanding the mind versus getting told about things.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this idea for making video games ever since I was in graduate school 30 years ago. But if you think about what computers could do then, it was all like text-based stuff. And actually, when I applied to get my PhD, when they asked, what do you think about writing a dissertation on? And I said, I want to make games to teach math. And I actually even wrote some games. But again, what you could do back then was just text. The computer would come up and say, what's 4 times 8? And if you said 12, it would say, no, you're adding, don't do that. But there wasn't graphics, there wasn't video. So I went off and I did other stuff. I wrote a dissertation on intelligence testing in the US and Mexico, and got a job as a professor. And then when my husband passed away, and even when he was ill, I started doing consulting because we had 2 incomes and now we had 1. And on top of that, we had all these medical bills. And so I started doing consulting, and when he passed away, I decided I wanted to move back home because, it's really hard being somewhere, raising 3 kids by yourself and not having that support system.
So tell us, how did 7-Generation Games get started then? When did you just decide, I want to start an actual video game company?
Well, it's funny. Eric Longi and I, again, he was from Spirit Lake, and we got the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. and analyze the National Indian Education Study. And I wanted to go because I'm really into data analysis. My PhD is in applied statistics, and Eric wanted to go because it was a free trip to Washington. He will tell you this. So we went, and he was supposed to be like the cultural subject matter expert, and I was supposed to be the data analysis person. And we analyzed the data, and we found that the more Native American children participated in cultural activities, the worse they did academically. And I was very surprised at this and shocked. And Eric, who was president of the school board back on the Spirit Lake Nation, was not. And he said, first of all, think about it a minute. The time in school is finite. So if you have 5 hours in your curriculum that you spend on Native American studies, that's 5 hours less you spend on math or social studies or whatever. And he said also a lot of teachers who are elementary teachers don't particularly like math, and that's why they went into elementary ed as opposed to engineering or something that's more math intensive.
I think most people don't like math. Is that not true? Nicole likes it. I struggled. My son struggles. You did an interview with Michael Cashy last night. He specifically interviewed you because he struggles with math. I'd say probably 60 to 70% of the population, that's probably their worst subject.
Well, and I think it's more true in this country than other places, and I think there are two reasons for that. One, it's somehow acceptable to say we're not very good at math. And I deliberately tell people I'm good at math because I want that to be a thing. Because no one says, I can't read too well, or I'm sort of dumb. Why is it okay to say you're not good at math? And part of it is we have this very misguided idea that math is something that you either have some magic math brain and you're good at it or you're not. And I can tell you that in one of my advanced statistics courses, not only was I number one in the class, but I was a standard deviation ahead of the number two person. So I was number one up here. I'm married to someone who went to UCLA for his PhD in particle physics because, and this is a quote, when the kids asked him why he picked that, because nuclear physics was too easy.
Oh, wow.
And yet, both of us have had times when we didn't get something in math. And we would swear, and we would read the book over, and we would do it again, and we would try and, Dennis is big on watching, videos online on everything. But you get good at math like you get good at track or writing or judo or public speaking. You do a lot of it. And the first time you do it, you suck. The first game we made was horrible. And it had bugs and all kinds of problems. And then we did another one, and we did another. So, but anyway, so to get back to your thing about math and why we did 7th-generation games, so Eric says to me, I think I am not all surprised by these results because I have been a teacher at tribal schools. I've been a school board member. I'm a parent who has several children who've gone through schools on the reservation. And he said, the less time you put into the school day in math, the worse kids are going to do. I mean, it only makes sense. Mm-hmm. And he said often our cultural classes are not integrated with the rest of our curriculum. I mean, Eric's, got a doctorate in educational administration, so he's, knows this stuff cold. So he's probably the best person to do this study with. So we're driving back to the airport, shared a cab back together, and he says, I am not going to accept that my grandchildren will learn their culture or math. It's not going to be one or the other. You need to do something. I have yet to have established why it became my responsibility in the cab to the airport. But
Yeah. And you seem like the kind of person where if I approach you with an idea, AnnMaria, you'll be like, yeah, let's do that. And then you will actually go do it. Where most people will be like, yeah, that's a great idea. You will do it. You'll get it done.
That's the thing that always makes me laugh too when people have an idea about games, they have an idea about any kind of startup, but it's a secret. I don't want to tell you because you might steal my idea. I'm like, listen to me, girlfriend. We have enough ideas of our own. Our problem is getting the time to do the ideas we've got. And yes, you're right. I think that in anybody in the world is just such a rare skill that people. I went to this great thing called Digital Women that was put on by Digital LA, which oddly enough was not in LA, it was in Pasadena, but whatever. And one of the women was a producer, and she talked about how she got started in her profession. And she said, there's so much of success is you just show up and put out. Mm-hmm. And she talked about how she started out.
What are you talking about here?
I know. She started out as an assistant to someone. I think I might be wrong, but I think it's the woman who did The Guild and then went on to do some other TV show. And she started out as the personal assistant to her because she just wanted to get in the business any which way. And her boss was so impressed because they were having meetings all day. They have those cottages at Universal Studios. And at the end of the day, she said, you washed the dishes. And the woman's name was Jenny Powell. And she said, yes, because the dishes were dirty and I was here, so I washed them. But her boss was amazed. She's like, well, other personal assistants would do that. It would be somebody else's job. Mm-hmm. But the number of people who just see something needs to be done and do it. Like I work with people all the time that say, well, I don't know how to do animation in Photoshop, or I don't know how to edit something in iMovie, or I don't know how. Well, this would be a prime opportunity for you to learn. Because all the people that know how to do it did not shoot out of the, womb knowing how to program a JavaScript. They figured it out. So,
I'm pretty sure I shot out of the womb with my microphone. I was ready to go. I announced to the world.
That must have been very uncomfortable for your mom.
You know, she's a bigger lady.
She's not. She's 3'9". She's tiny. I just want to say I was number one in my math class too because I was the only one in my math class. I only had 3 other classmates, and they chose not to take 4 years of math, so I was the only one in my math class.
Honestly, that happened to me by the end of my PhD program because you have all, you keep getting higher and higher levels of statistics, and gradually more and more people dropped out and they fell behind. So we all started together, but somebody would have a baby. And I had actually 2 babies during my PhD program, but I never quite understood why that was a reason to stop doing anything. But anyway, they would have a baby and take a year off, or they would fall behind at work and have to take some time off, or whatever, change majors. And yes, so by the time I got to the very last statistics course in the doctoral program, it was me. And talk about pressure, because there's nobody in class to hide behind, right?
Yeah.
So when I come to class, and it was not simple stuff. It was like, and how does analysis of variance fit into stepwise discriminant function analysis, AnnMaria? Because I was the only one there, and by God, I remember the answer.
Because it does.
I actually know the answer to that.
Well, I don't think too much stops you, because I understand that you had a baby in September and then won the U.S. Open in October.
Yes, this is true. And now that I look back at a lot of these things, when you like stack up everything I did in my career, some of these things, they really look amazing. But at the time, it was the only option that I could see, because I wanted to make the world team again. And you get so many points every time you win a tournament. And I had taken 5 months off of competition, because when Maria was 4 months, when I was 4 months pregnant with Maria, I quit competing, because cutting weight and being pregnant are really not.
And it's probably not real smart to get like thrown around anymore when you're like 5-6 months pregnant.
Well, actually, I kept working out, and I asked my doctor about it, and he said, if you did not do judo for the last 10 years, I would say don't pick to start now. If you weren't into weightlifting, don't start now. But if it's something you've been doing, then you probably know how to protect yourself and all that. So I actually worked out up until the week she was born. But you can't cut weight, stay your same weight, and be 9 months pregnant. So yeah, I missed a couple of tournaments. So to get back my #1 spot, I had to go to the U.S. Open and win less than 2 months after the baby was born. So you do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had a baby on Saturday and played softball on Thursday, and I swear I lost my uterus between first and second.
We should hang out, Nicole.
It wasn't smart, but I did it anyway. We're going to be short. You can't forfeit.
Exactly.
I taught dance up until the week I had my son, rolling around, doing leaps and jumps and everything at 9 months pregnant. It was so awkward and horrible. It should have been a YouTube video. It was so bad.
But here's the thing, pregnancy is not an illness. Now, sometimes you have problems. Sometimes people have, gestational diabetes, and they have really horrible complications. So that does happen. But for a lot of people, like my grandfather was the youngest of 16 children, him and his twin sister. So people have been having children for eons. Well, maybe not eons, but for a very, very, very long time. And, it's the same thing when my kids were little bitty. People act as if raising children, you have to boil and sterilize everything. And I had an argument with my husband about this. If babies were that fragile, the human race would have died out long ago. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying play football with them, but,
yeah.
If you want to pick up your infant and go to a conference and, nurse a baby between sessions, good on you.
Mm-hmm.
So I never did answer your question about why games. Okay, so.
Yes, let's talk about second generation games.
So, Eric says to me, you need to do something, because I'm not going to accept my children and grandchildren learning math or learning the culture. So I had this idea of games ever since I was applied to graduate school. So now what you can do is so, so much greater. So I decided that I would develop these games that had a Native American theme. This is Samantha, by the way. I said that we're having an in-house hackathon, so we were up till 4 a.m. working, and then she got up to do some more work. So we're all in favor of of working and he's checking stuff out on Photoshop to find the next thing. We're dead serious here at 7th Generation Games. So yes, I had the idea that we could come up with a game with a storyline that had to do with Native American culture. And Eric got, kind of brought up the idea too when we were walking through Tanitopa Elementary School, and he had been a teacher there, and one of the students and him got into a conversation, and the student was complaining about math, and they said, why do we have to learn this? We're Indian, this isn't part of our culture. And Eric said, are you kidding me? He said, the Dakota are nomadic people. They traveled all over this huge territory, and they met up, and they had powwows, and they had, I don't remember the exact word that he said for when they got together and had trading and stuff like that. But he said, do you really think that from 450 miles in each direction, people just showed up at the same spot on the same day? Like, wow, what a coincidence, meet you here. People had to be really good at math.
Hold each other, right?
Yeah, they text each other.
Right. People had to be really good at math. They had to estimate how far they could go in a day. They had to take into account variables like the terrain. Like if you're, going over the Black Hills, it's going to take you longer than you're walking through the plains. And they had to estimate how much food they would need per person. And if they were sick, people had to go out and get medicine, and they had to get the right amount, and they had to make things. And people used math all of the time. And one of the reasons I think kids have trouble with math is because, and adults too, they don't see the application of it.
Oh yeah, I hear that all the time from my kid when I'm trying to help him with algebra and he's frustrated. I'm never ever going to use this, Mom. Why do I need to do that?
If you don't know it, you're never going to use it. If you didn't know how to drive, you would never drive anywhere, right? Right? So it's true. If you don't learn it, you will never use it. I speak Spanish, and it has turned out to be very useful in certain situations. I wish I spoke Spanish better. If I spoke Chinese, I'm sure there are situations that would be very useful to me. But because I don't speak Chinese, I never use it. So it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
True.
So we got the idea of doing a game based in, centuries ago, and using things where people actually use math. But then we also wanted to generalize that to today. So if you're estimating how much food you need to make it across the plains, then, and then if you shoot a buffalo, how much could you carry back, and how many people would you need to bring with you, and so on. Well, you could use those same kinds of things to estimate how much food do you need to buy if you're having a bunch of people over for Thanksgiving dinner, or if you're calculating how you could pack a Red River card and how many robes would go in it. You could use that same kind of thing if you're calculating how many boxes you need to move books from one classroom to the other. So that was our general idea, and like anything, you get a general idea and you flesh it out more and more, and we're a startup, so we iterate. With the first thing we come out with, you have to, if you're making games, or probably if you're doing any kind of startup, you have to be willing to throw stuff out. To have spent a lot of time, somebody said, and I think they were talking about writing books, but it's true also of writing games. You have to be willing to kill your babies. And I know it sounds like a terrible phrase, but you spend all this time on working on some part of the game, and you think this activity where they're chasing guinea pigs or whatever, it's just going to be the coolest thing, and kids play it, they think it's really boring. Or it just is too hard. No one can do it. Like the first time we did Fish Lake, there's a part where you have to jump over the venomous snakes, and you also will learn about natural history in our games. For example, you will learn about the prairie rattlesnake is the only venomous snake in North Dakota. But anyway, you have to jump over the snakes and all that. Well, the first time we got emails from the teachers, there are too many damn snakes in this game. The kids kept dying, right? Because it was too hard. So we had college students test it. So now our next game that we're working on, we're actually doing a survey, so we could put that in a link somewhere, on coming up with a name for it. So we had 4 names that we did a survey and asked people to pick, and the 5th option was, I have something really amazing. So the name that came up the most common in ours was Forgotten Trail, but then we had like 85 people suggest other names. So we're going to go through those 85 other names and do a round 2 and see if we come up with that. So our next game is going to be for a little older crowd, and actually even aiming at people like, well, anybody. We call it like push-ups for your brain.
Right.
So if you're 8 years old, doing push-ups is good and make you stronger. But if you're 65, doing push-ups is good and makes you stronger. So that's what our newest games are, is games that not only are they fun to play, but they're also interesting to anybody. And when you get done playing them, you will have learned some new vocabulary words, you'll remember how you multiply and divide fractions. A lot of this is stuff you had in 5th grade, but you forgot it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you run across that, whether it's a pre-employment test when you're trying to get a job somewhere, or you're trying to help your kid with your homework. And so it will refresh a lot of things that you knew, and it'll be fun. So it's not just for kids. It's, like I said, just like push-ups aren't just for kids. You do them in PE, but you also do them as an adult. And it's important because I see people that I went to school with, and we were in middle school or high school together, and we're all a bunch of smart little kids. And then I went to college, and I got into a career where I use my brain all the time, and they got a job loading trucks, and they go home and they watch primetime TV. And the difference between us now intellectually is vast. Mm-hmm. And I don't see why people don't see this, because if you were a high school athlete and then you got into, a job where you sat at a desk all day, 20 years later, you and your friend who kept running and kept working out are vastly different physically. Why do you think that wouldn't be different for your intellect? So it's like push-ups for your brain. That's what we do.
Now, you were talking before about one of the math games that you have out. It's geared mainly towards Native American culture, but I think that probably anybody that just really wants to learn about math will enjoy it just like any other video game. Is that not correct?
It is true. We originally were funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, of all places, for rural and economic development, because most reservations are in very rural areas. And then we did a Kickstarter campaign to raise some more money, and people started emailing us and posting on our website, well, I really have trouble with math, like a friend yesterday. I really have trouble with math. This is just for Indians. And our chief marketing officer said, when I was a kid, I really liked Super Mario, and I am not a plumber in overalls.
It's not Italian, probably. He's not even Italian.
Right.
Exactly.
So she said, no, 7th Generation Games is for anybody who has $9.99. And we started out thinking that this was going to be a game where it was played in schools where they had predominantly Native American populations. And that's how it started out. And now less than half of our users are Native American in any way, and less than half of them are in schools. So we started out with one focus, and we ended up finding out that there's a much, much broader market than we had originally envisioned. Like you said, lots of people want to be better at math.
Yeah.
And they also don't want it to suck while they're learning it.
Right, they don't want to sit there and look at a book. I think that's really great because kids learn differently now. Back in the day, it was okay for me to look at the book and go through the motions and just do the math problems as the teacher said, but kids nowadays, they learn differently. They want something more. Their attention span, I think, is less than ours was.
They don't want to be bored to death, and we try to do that in our games to have 2 minutes. So none of our videos are over 4 minutes. So if we're going to show you how to read a simple bar graph, we might have a 2-minute really basic video. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to go, if that didn't do it for you, you can go and study and do a little bit more advanced video, or you can skip the basic video. So there's a lot of choices. Do you want to read a web page? Do you want to do a practice problem? Do you want to do an activity? Do you want to watch a video? So they can pick however they want to learn, and they can pick often the level of difficulty. And it's also set up that the harder problem that you get right, then the next problem gets harder. If you get a problem wrong, the next problem gets easier. So the game actually accommodates itself to you. But I have to go because we have a meeting that's starting 4 minutes ago.
Just my boys have been testing out your game for the past week or two, and they only have one complaint, but I think it might be purposeful. It's just that they can't run when they're going out to get herbs to bring back.
They can't. Hold down the shift key.
Oh, hold down the shift.
Hold down the shift key and see. Woohoo! We thought everything.
I thought maybe it's to learn patience and that.
Hold down the shift key while you hold the arrow, and you'll run forward, backwards, sideways, whatever.
See, actually, this whole interview has just been a ruse so that our kids can beat the game.
They love it, though. And is that Rhonda saying, look out, wolves?
No, that is Rhonda's youngest sister. However, Rhonda was the one that had the idea of putting in the shift key to make it run faster. So Rhonda actually is not a consultant in name only on the game. She plays a lot of video games. She's super into World of Warcraft and Pokemon, and so we have her come over every few months. In fact, she's supposed to do it yesterday, but I was too busy, so she'll probably come over today and go through like the latest version of the game and give her feedback as somebody who plays games all the time.
All right. So, we're definitely going to talk again. We got a lot more to talk about.
What's your website, AnnMaria, if people want to find out more about 7 Generation Games?
www.7generationgames.com.
The number
7.
Yes, actually, we just bought the word 7 too. So we are dominant in the 7 market.
Ruling the 7s.
That's right. 7generationgames.com.
Awesome. Thanks, AnnMaria.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Okay, see ya.
Bye.